post the recording later once it's done. So my name's Meredith. I am one of the guides at Blaze Adventure Tours. I was just telling Valerie I got into hiking and backpacking and things because I just really loved being able to unplug, and it's like really the only way that I can truly forget about like all the other stress in life, like work and whatever else is going on, and just being able to focus on like, okay, today I have to get from here to here, and then I just get to camp in the woods and there's no distractions. You probably don't have cell phone reception. So that's how I got into it. I'm excited about this webinar because I've heard from a lot of people that the reason they don't want to like spend an overnight in the backcountry is because they don't know what to cook or what to eat. And that's kind of a hindrance for people. So I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. And I'll start the presentation. If you came to our last webinar in April, I apologize. The first few slides of this are kind of going to be the same, but I'll try to get through it quickly, so we'll get to the good stuff soon. Just a little bit of background about Blaze Adventure Tours. So my husband and I, Dave, we started this company back in 2020 because we have been taking our entire relationship trips together where we're bikepacking, we're backpacking, and we'd come back from the trip and our friends would be like, wow, that was so cool. You know, I wish I could do something like that. And we were always like, well, you can, you just have to like kind of prepare and take a leap of faith and just go for it. And with Blaze Adventure Tours, we wanted to kind of be able to remove that stepping stone for people and or provide a stepping stone for people to bridge that gap and do these things that they're interested in, but without assistance may not be willing to or confident enough to. And in the future, you know, we'd love for you to come on another Blaze Adventure Tours trip, but we also want to give you the confidence to do it on your own. So that's kind of where we came from. A little bit about what we do. These are just some pictures from some of the trips that we've led. All of our trips and all of our experiences, we want to be unique and memorable. We do have a few like open to the public bike tours, but mostly what we try to focus on now is doing custom trips for friends, families, corporate teams, whatever it is. We're obviously leading a backpacking trip for you guys in September, which I'm really excited about. And that was all kind of curated knowing that it's a beginner's trip, and we want it to be something that you guys enjoy and that you want to do again in the future, whether it's with us or on your own. And we also like to focus on having small groups. So with backpacking, that's kind of inevitable. In the backcountry, most places, the limit is 10 people. We always have 2 guides, so that really limits it to 8 participants. And then so in the backcountry, you don't really want a big group anyways, because it kind of takes away from the experience for you and for anyone else who might be out in the woods that day. But it also just helps to create closer knit friendships and memories that you guys will make together. And then ultimately what we want to do is help you get outside your comfort zone, push your boundaries, and do it in a way that's safe and in a way that feels fulfilling to you, and where you don't feel like it's okay to feel a little afraid, but we don't want you to be uncomfortable. But we do want you to be able to take that next step. What is backpacking? I could probably just delete this slide. You guys probably all know what it is, but just a form of human-powered travel, which is a term that we like to use for the kind of trips that we take. We like to move by foot or by bike, or I mean, it could be by canoe or kayak, whatever you want to do. But in backpacking, the case where you carry your own belongings in a backpack. And today we're going to talk about backpacking fuel, how to plan for it, what to pack, ideas for meals, things like that. You don't have to eat a dehydrated meal every time. You don't have to rely on Cliff Bars or PB&Js. There's some other avenues to explore, especially if you're doing a longer trip. Eating the same thing over and over gets really old. I'm okay having like 1 or 2 dehydrated meals on maybe a 6-night trip, but that's about all that I can do. I got to pack something else. So in order to figure out what to pack, you have to know how to plan for it. And these are just some of the factors that we like to consider when we're planning for our meals. The big one is going to be obviously like the distance you're going each day, combined with, it's all going to vary. It's all very personal. So your body weight, how much weight you're carrying on your pack, what your metabolism's like. Some of this just kind of requires some intuition with what you normally eat in a day, how you feel when you eat a certain amount, especially when you're exercising. It also is going to depend on your pace. If you're out there longer, you're probably just going to burn more calories, even if, you know, let's say you're moving faster, so you're not out there as long. A lot of the times, if you're moving slower, you're out there longer. Because you're out there longer, you're going to burn more calories. Elevation changes and temperature, of course, is important. All considering like how much you're going to sweat, how you're going to feel. If it's really, really hot, you might not want to eat a hot meal when you get to camp, things like that. And then to estimate your calories, the first thing you need to do is know your base metabolic rate. This is literally just the calories that you need to survive, like being a couch potato. It doesn't factor in any exercise, doesn't consider like a walk around the block, like with your dog, or if you did a bunch of stairs that day, you know, whatever it is, that's just the minimum you need to survive. And that can be found just with like a quick Google search. You put in like your height, your weight, your general activity, and things like that. And then you need to estimate your calories burned. This is a little bit trickier. It kind of depends what tools you have at your disposal. I have a Garmin watch that has a heart rate monitor in it. I also have a chest strap, which is kind of a little bit more accurate, but I don't like to wear it, so I just rely on my watch. And that uses heart rate to estimate the calories that I've burned for whatever activity I'm doing. You can also look this up. There's calculators on the internet, but they're not as accurate because it all is very dependent on your body type, your heart rate, things like that. So then you want to add those two sets of calories up. That's how much you need to eat, basically, to not lose any weight while you're on the trip, things like that. But sometimes it is like an excessive amount. So you can't always, like, for example, I'm a triathlete and I've done a couple Ironmans, and I know that I can't reasonably eat 6,000 calories in a day, especially if I'm exercising, because I'm going to feel like garbage, even though that's realistically the amount that I'm going to burn. So just some things to consider. You know your body best, so you kind of have to play with it. And then always pack extra. Even if you think you're not going to be able to eat 3,000, 4,000 calories, whatever it is, I would pack close to that amount so that you always have something extra in case you are hungry and you need that before you set off on your next day. The worst thing you can do is undereat one day and then wake up already depleted in the morning. It'll make that next day so much harder. So this is your base metabolic rate, just the definition. I already kind of said that earlier. This gives an equation here. It's just 655, and then you have to use your weight, your height, and your age. But this can also just be easily done online. And then again, estimating your calories burned, reviewing data from training hikes. So like I can look at my Garmin or my Strava, whatever it is. You can use an online calculator, and then you can also use other online resources. Like there's a lot of endurance sport dietitians that can kind of that have articles published and things that will say, like, you know, you should aim for this many calories per hour or this many carbs per hour, whatever it is. There's a lot of good information out there. This is just an example. So I'm 130 pounds, I'm 5'2", and I'm 30 years old. So my base metabolic rate is just under 1,400 calories. And then this is an example hike that I've done. On average, based on this hike, I burn around 250 calories per hour. Wasn't a super strenuous hike, so I'd say it was like medium terrain. And this is just an example. If I were to hike 14 miles, around 2 miles per hour, then I would burn close to 1,800 calories. So my total there would be 1,800 plus 1,400 is close to 3,200. And then this is if you were to use an online calculator. This is what I mean by when I say they're not super accurate. This example says that I should be eating 1,100 calories, and that's way less than what I would have actually burned based on the hike that I tracked using my heart rate. So I would always use the higher number if you are trying to pick between the two. So total here, again, I rounded up, but it's really like 3,100 calories. Realistically, I've done a lot of hiking, a lot of running and cycling and things, and I know that if I'm exercising, I can comfortably consume between 2,500 and 3,000 calories. If not, I'll just feel too full, and I won't, especially if I'm like hiking all day. When I'm getting close to that upper limit, it just becomes hard to put more food in your mouth. It kind of makes you nauseous. So just know your limit, know what you can handle. Some examples of what to eat while you're out there. We'll get more detail, but these are just some examples. Keep in our like pantry, our camping pantry, shelf stable snacks. So we always have like peanut butter, those little peanut butter packets, ramen, things like that. Freeze dried meals are always an option. They are on the pricier side and they're not always super satisfying. So again, I don't usually eat a ton of those. Other staples, pasta, couscous, rice, you always want to make sure you're eating lots of carbohydrates. For protein, there's those shelf-stable chicken, tuna, and salmon packets or cans. Cured meats, hard cheeses, so like Parmesan. If you're not going to be out there super long, it's not going to be crazy hot, you could bring like an extra sharp cheddar. There's also some like shelf-stable cheeses like Laughing Cow that comes in the little wedges. You can bring things like that. And then nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables. A lot of times we'll bring like some apples with us, like harder fruits that aren't going to get smushed in your pack. You can also bring like carrots, celery, whatever. I don't worry too much about having, if it's something that you would normally refrigerate at home, if I'm not going to be out there for a super long time, or it's not going to be super hot, I don't worry too much about having like fresh fruit and vegetables. Sometimes like we did a backpacking trip in Dolly Sods and we just made vegetable wraps for each day and brought it with us. And it was only like, it was like 50 or 60 degrees and we were out there for 3 days. And I didn't get sick. So use your judgment with that. Ideas for quick breakfasts. Obviously oatmeal with the instant oatmeal packs are super easy. Just make sure you're eating enough. One of those instant oatmeal packets probably isn't enough calories, so you might want to add some like nuts or fruit or something to that. Cereal and granola. You can always bring powdered milk and add water to it. Make sure you're obviously using filtered water if that is the case. Peanut butter and banana chips. Trader Joe's has like a crazy section of dried fruits and even freeze-dried fruits and things. They're a really good place to look when you're like going in and looking for backpacking snacks and backpacking meals. Freeze-dried meals, again, they do make breakfast options. Pop-Tarts are super easy and usually people like them. Pro meal bars, I don't know if you guys have ever eaten these before. I think they sell them at REI. These are like meant to be a full meal replacement. They're close to like, I think they're 400 or 500 calories. So they're pretty filling. They're full of like real food, like nuts, seeds, things like that. So they're pretty calorie dense. I would like, don't just eat 3 of these in a day. I would add other things. You're going to need more calories than that, but it is a good option like for a really quick breakfast or even like a quick lunch on the go. And then I always like to bring coffee. I absolutely love waking up in the woods and having like a hot cup of coffee in the morning. So there's a couple of different options with that. There are like backpacking pour overs that you can bring. Jetboil makes like a French press thing that you can use with it. And then there's also like the Starbucks, if you like more of like a latte or something sweeter, they make these instant powder packs that you just mix with hot water. And for lunches, I tend to just kind of eat lunch while I'm hiking. Other people like to take breaks. That's totally fine too. So I usually just have something really quick, like a peanut butter wrap with banana. You could also do like a little charcuterie board with crackers and cheese and salami, or like summer sausage, something like that. Pita and tuna or chicken salad. You could also do chickpea salad if you're vegetarian, and let's say you like packed it in the morning and you wanted to bring it with you for lunch that day, that would be fine. Pita, hummus, and vegetables and olives, things like that. And then pro meal bars, like I said, sometimes I'll just eat that while I'm hiking. These are just some of the brands of freeze-dried meals. The two most common you'll probably see are Backpackers Pantry and Mountain House. Patagonia has a few options. The Patagonia ones aren't super calorie dense, but they are pretty tasty. I think there's a chili, and then there's like a black bean soup and maybe one other. We've had the chili and the black bean soup, and both were good, but they don't really pack a punch for calories. So I would go, if you are going to go the freeze-dried meal route, I would go with Mountain House or Backpackers Pantry. And these are just some homemade meal ideas. I think most of the stuff is from Trader Joe's, like I was saying earlier. Just an instant oatmeal packet, that's a great base, a good starter. And then adding like freeze-dried berries. You could also add banana chips, coconut, cinnamon, brown sugar. It's very coconutty oatmeal is this recipe. But there's a lot of variations you can add to it. You could add chia seeds for even more calories, more fiber, maple syrup, nut butter, things like that. This is an example of like if you didn't want to take a dehydrated meal with you, something that was shelf stable that you could bring and cook once you got to camp. I wouldn't really cook something like this for lunch, just because unless you want to take a longer break, which is totally fine, but this would be something that I would make for like dinner. Couscous cooks super, super fast. Make sure you get regular couscous, not the Israeli couscous that's like bigger. Because with regular couscous, you don't even have to strain it. You just add like the right amount of water. It cooks. I don't even think you boil the water and then you turn it off. You add the couscous and it cooks in like 5 minutes. My mom used to make chicken marbella for Christmas Eve every year. So this is kind of how I came up with this recipe. So it has protein with the chicken. It has carbs with the couscous. You get some fats from the olive oil. And then just some like added extra flavor. You get fiber from the prunes, things like that. And then I think it was in the previous slide, you can get these little, if you have empty spice containers, small like this, just save them and bring them camping with you. You can add salt, pepper, cinnamon, parsley, whatever it is. So you have a smaller container of it. Vegetarian chili mac, just like a good old fashioned box of mac and cheese with some taco seasoning. And these are meatless grounds from Trader Joe's. They're made from pea protein. You could also just use textured vegetable protein that you can buy at most grocery stores. It might be in like their natural food section, but most places have it. And you could also add like chicken or sausage or something to that if you weren't vegetarian. Pesto pasta, another easy one. You just regular pasta. You don't need to bring a whole bag like this. I should have said this earlier, but kind of portion out what you need for each meal. And you could even just put it all, whatever's going to cook together, just put that in one bag. So you have like, when you go to make dinner, you just pull out the one bag and you're good to go. So pasta, pesto, this Knorr makes a lot of sauce mixes like this. They also make like bags of pasta and rice and things where you just have to add water. So that's another option too. And you can find all kinds of stuff like this. Same with the taco seasoning. Like the little packs are super lightweight. They're super easy, and they can add a lot of flavor to whatever you're making. We have a bunch of these little packs of olive oil. They also make little things of vegetable broth. Those are good to have to help add some flavor and add some calories. But this one is really easy to kind of play with. You can add chicken or not. You could add tuna. You could add sun-dried tomatoes or another vegetable. We just have artichokes here. And then the pine nuts too will help add some good calories to this meal. And these are just some snack ideas. We have a huge bin of snacks in our basement. for bike packing and backpacking and hiking and things. And these are just some of the examples that are in there. It looks super unhealthy, but just don't worry about that because you're burning a lot of calories while you're out there. And you need to eat something that's going to taste good or else you're not going to eat. So these are also all from Trader Joe's. Some of the more calorie dense options. I don't think I have a picture of it here, but like the sesame sticks that use, well, not just Trader Joe's, but they sell at grocery stores. Those are really calorie dense. They're a good option for snacks. And then this is the cheese, the shelf-stable cheese I was talking about. You don't need to refrigerate it. So you can just take a couple wedges with you and you can put it on like a tortilla or some bread or some crackers, whatever you want. Peanut butter pretzels or just regular pretzels, get some salt in there too. It's always good to have, especially if it's really hot and you're sweating a lot. Jerky or these like chomp sticks are good for protein options. And then obviously like Cliff Bars, Fig Bars, trail mix, gummies, things like that. So this is an example of what I might eat for a day of hiking or backpacking. For breakfast, I'd have oatmeal with peanut butter and banana or banana chips. For lunch, I would just have a wrap. So, and I might make this in the morning or the night before and just take it with me, or I might stop and make it really quickly. But I do like tortilla, salami or pepperoni, something like that, cheese, and just an apple. And then dinner, pesto pasta, which is what I showed earlier. Snacks, Cliff Bar, gummy bears, trail mix, chocolate, and that comes out to just under 3,000 calories, which is in that range of what I know I can comfortably eat. You don't have to go in and break down all these macros and everything, especially if you're practicing. Like, I would not recommend going for a backpacking trip without practicing what you're going to be eating in a day. So if you go for like a nice long day hike, kind of try out some things that you're interested in, see how you feel. Are you really tired at the end of the day? Do you have a stomach ache? Do you, like, especially the next day, do you feel really depleted? Because if that's the case, you probably would think like, okay, I need to eat some more. If you can, I would try to eat like every hour or so, even if it's just something little. Trying to just continuously put calories in your body will keep you from bonking later and just kind of, that just means like crashing and running out of energy. And if you're just eating little bits here and there, it does really add up, especially like sometimes it's hard to like shove a whole Cliff Bar in your mouth, but if you eat, you know, half of it in the morning and then an hour later you have some trail mix and then an hour later you have lunch and then an hour after that you have the other half of the Cliff Bar, just keep putting those calories in. This is just the basics of what you need for a cook set. Sometimes you'll see it called a mess kit. If you're going to be cooking, you want a stove and the proper fuel. Some stoves have an igniter on them. If it doesn't, and I mean, even if it does, you should just bring matches or a lighter anyways as a backup. You want a pot with a lid. Some people also want to bring like a pan, but I usually find that the pot will do the trick. And you want utensils, so bring a sharp knife, something that you can cut anything with basically, and then also just like a spork. That's usually enough. A multi-tool, something that could also incorporate the knife in it. It also great if it has a can and a bottle opener. A corkscrew too, if you brought wine with you, but that's really heavy to carry on a backpacking trip. A bowl and a plate, a scraper or a brush to clean with. A strainer is really great to have also for cleaning, which I'll go over in a second. And then some kind of like small microfiber towel, just to help you dry your dishes before you put them away. And I'll go back to with the fuel. Most like a Jetboil or just like a simple canister stove comes with like the small fuel that's reusable. In the previous webinar, we kind of went over the different fuel types. That's the kind that we use and recommend for backpacking. If you're like car camping, you could obviously have like a full cooking stove and like the bigger propane fuel canisters, but they also make camping or backpacking stoves that are fueled by like wood and other things. But the canister stove is what has worked very well for us. And then I think somebody asked this question about cleaning your dishes in the backcountry. It's a huge pain. A lot of the times, if I'm only staying like one night, I might just have a bag with me that I can put the dirty dishes in and pack it out with me and just clean it when I get home. If it's going to be multiple nights that I'm out there, or that just isn't something that I want to do that night, I'll make sure that I follow these steps. These are like these are in compliance with the leave no trace principles. So you want to pack out any remaining food. Please don't dump it on the ground. The wildlife's going to eat it. It's going to attract bears, whatever it is. We just don't want to do that. So you want to, using that scraper or brush, scrape out any of the leftover food. Try to plan, when you plan your meals, to finish your meals each time. I know it's not always feasible, but it does help with reducing food waste and makes your life easier when you're actually cleaning them later. Once you've gotten as much food scraped out of the pot or the plate or whatever it is as you can, use your pot and the stove to heat some water. And the warm water will just make it easier to clean everything. Pour a little bit of warm water on your plate, your bowl, your mug, whatever it was. Scrub it as best you can. Scrub the pot as best you can, and then get off as much remaining residue as you can. And then that water is now dirty, so we have to dump it at least 200 feet from a water source. And you want to, if you brought a strainer with you, strain it out. And then just whatever like residue is left, put in that bag that you're going to pack out and take home, that you're going to throw away later. Just don't dump it on the ground. And then ideally you want to avoid using soap. I know it's not always possible. We often bring Dr. Bronner's with us just to have. You want to make sure you use a phosphate-free soap just because it's better for the environment. And then if you do end up using soap, when you dump your gray water, you want to bury it in a hole that's like 6 to 8 inches deep. Well, it's not found in water, so you don't want to dump it in water, but it's found deeper in the soil. So it'll help degrade everything faster if you bury that and cover it. And then just use the minimum amount of soap that you need to get the job done. All right, just overarching recommendations for planning food for backpacking. Always pack a backup meal and snacks. Even if you think you've packed plenty, always pack extra. That's weight worth carrying. Train your stomach. You don't want to be out on, like I said earlier, backpacking and trying something new for the first time, or just like eating more than you normally would. You don't want to have a stomach ache in the backcountry. It's really, really unpleasant. So just prepare your stomach, train your stomach like you train your legs. Eat every hour or so. I mentioned that earlier. More consistent calories will just help keep you going. Determine if you'll have a water source at mealtime. This will be part of your route planning. That's just like if you're planning to eat a dehydrated meal, for example, and you don't have any water nearby, you're going to have to use however much water it calls for out of your pack, like the water that you might have planned on drinking that night. So that's just something to consider. If you're just planning on having like a PB&J or a wrap or something, that's not as big of a deal. But if you're planning to cook and you need water to cook, then that's something to look out for. Pack food you want to eat. So just whatever tastes good, whatever sounds good is what you should plan to bring with you. Don't be like, oh, well, I need to pack something healthier because I ate a chocolate bar or whatever. Like, who cares? You're going to be burning a ton of calories. It doesn't matter. And then eat lots of carbs. We have had people come on trips with us who want to use the trip as a way for them to lose weight, hiking and biking. It's happened on both, and it never ends well. A lot of times, like, they'll be avoiding carbs, they'll be avoiding eating, they'll try to plan for a calorie deficit, and all it does is make them feel like absolute garbage. And it ruins the trip for other people too, because they're miserable, they're projecting. Eat carbs. They're really good for you. They're the main source of energy that your brain needs. They're the easiest source of energy for your body to convert into energy. So just eat carbs. Don't avoid them. What not to do. I just kind of said this, don't intentionally create a calorie deficit. It might be inevitable. Just depends on how many calories you burn that day, but try your hardest to eat as much as you can. Try your meals and snacks for the first time on the trail. I also mentioned that before. Don't focus too much on macros. You can kind of take an overarching look at the food that you're packing and say like, okay, I have some protein options, I have carbs, I have fats, and I have food that tastes good. That's the most important. Always pack extra food. Don't ignore the weather forecast. If it's going to be really hot, I said this earlier, you might not want a hot meal. You might just want to bring like a wrap or something. Or if it is going to be really cold, you're probably going to want something hot, whether it's like tea or just a hot meal, like a dehydrated meal, or if you wanted to carry the weight of like a can of soup or something, or make your own soup, or even bring, like they make the packs that are a little bit lighter, you just add water to. That's definitely something to consider, because especially if it's raining, and that's another point. If it's raining, you might not want to be sitting out cooking, but if it's cold and raining, it might be worth it. Who knows? And then count on having a fire. A lot of times in the backcountry, like in Shenandoah, for example, you're not allowed to have a fire in the backcountry. So if you're planning on cooking with a fire, depending on where you go, that might not be an option. And depending on the time of the year too, sometimes it's allowed, sometimes it's not. So just make sure you're checking the park's website or the national forest, whatever it is, to check those rules before you go out. That kind of concludes the backpacking food portion of this. So Valerie already touched on this, but I just wanted to reiterate that we're hosting the beginner backpacking trip September 9th to 10th of this year. I'm really excited. It's going to be myself and our guide Laurel, who's a wilderness first responder. So you'll be in great hands. It does include gear rental, so everything you need for backpacking, besides your shoes and your clothes, basically. So it'll include the backpack, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, pillow, tent, headlamp, things like that. If you have your own gear, you're more than welcome to bring it. But we do have that gear rental for people who maybe, if you're just trying to kind of get your toes wet in backpacking, you don't want to invest all that money. This is a great option for that. It'll be 14 miles total over 2 days. And we're going to climb one of Shenandoah's lesser known peaks. It's very close to Old Rag, but it's not Old Rag. It has very similar views and it's way less traveled. It really gives you more of the feel of being in the backcountry. I don't know if all you guys have been to Old Rag, and I'm sure it's better now with the permit system, but I went there one time and there was like a line down the mountain to get through the rock scramble. And I just didn't feel like I was in nature. I felt like I was at like a tourist attraction. The backpacking trip is limited to 8 spots. I know there are a few spots left. So if you want an unforgettable experience, you want to come hang out with us and learn some of the ropes of backpacking, please join us. We'd love to have you. And I know I have some questions that were sent earlier that I'll kind of go over, but if anybody else has questions right now, you can either speak up or post it in the chat. These are our dogs. This is Blaze. He's our mascot. And this is his buddy Trek. He doesn't have a company yet, but we're working on that. Any questions? Okay. One person sent a good question that was asking about like what kind of sandwiches that they can pack that don't need to be refrigerated. I've jotted some ideas down and I kind of already touched on some of these, but like using cured meats and hard cheeses are a great option. Cured meat doesn't need to be refrigerated. And using the Laughing Cow cheese is another option if you don't want like a harder cheese. Vegetable wraps with hummus is another option. Tuna sandwiches, chicken sandwiches, using the little packs is great. I like to bring wraps instead of bread because I just feel like I can pack the wraps easier without getting smushed. But that's totally a personal choice. And depending on like, I'll often make a sandwich that has like turkey and whatever stuff that normally needs to be refrigerated in the morning, and I'll eat it like 6 hours later for lunch. I've never gotten sick. obviously use your judgment with that. But if it's not super hot out, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And then there's always PB&J, Nutella, things like that. And then somebody also asked what some of my favorite dehydrated meals are. I am mostly vegetarian, but I do, when I'm camping, kind of eat whatever because sometimes it's just easier. But for backpacking, dehydrated meals, I really like the Backpackers Pantry Pad Thai, which I think I showed on here. They do also make there's vegetarian and there is a chicken pad Thai. The chana masala is also really good. And the Kathmandu curry is delicious. I think it's like lentils and beans. And ones that I haven't necessarily tried, but I've heard other people really like. People rave about the Mountain House beef stroganoff. Something about freeze-dried beef kind of freaks me out. But I'm sure it's fine, and people say it's delicious, so go for it. The mac and cheese is supposed to be good. I think Backpackers Pantry and Mountain House both have one of those. I've been on trips with people who have had the breakfast scrambles. I think that, I don't know if Backpackers Pantry has that, but I know Mountain House does, and they really like that. It's just like eggs and peppers, and there might be some like sausage in there. And then I also was on a trip with someone who had the chicken and dumplings from Mountain House, which they said was really good. So there's a lot of options. If you go on their website, you can order directly from the website, or you can get them at like REI. And like I said, I've also had the Patagonia Provisions, the chili and the black bean soup, and they were good, but they were not really very filling. So just something to consider. What else? We had questions on, not necessarily related to food, but starting out backpacking and doing it in a budget-friendly way, which is a great question. There's a few things that I would approach that with, and the big one would be not worrying so much about weight in the beginning. A lot of people want to be like ultra light, and if you're just starting out, especially if you're not sure it's something that you really want to do all the time, it's not necessarily worth investing that money. You might want to look for like a synthetic sleeping bag instead of a down sleeping bag. You could also look at like packing your own food instead of packing dehydrated meals. And dehydrated meals are kind of pricey. And then you don't need to buy like the fancy dry bags that everybody has. You can just use regular old Ziplocs. Like buy the 2-gallon Ziploc bags, shove your clothes in them, and it'll keep them perfectly dry. I still do that. And I've been backpacking. I have dry bags, and I still opt to use Ziplocs a lot of the time. I just did that last year when we were on the Tour de Mont Blanc. We just like packed our entire backpack with Ziplocs. So that's always an option. And you can reuse them too. They usually last. And then also looking for like gear swaps, used gear. I know Valerie said, I think maybe at the Adventure Summit, you guys are going to have a gear swap, which is super awesome. There's also, I think, a Facebook page for backpacking gear. I think it's called Backpacking Gear Flea Market or something like that. And then REI has a used gear section, and REI also has an outlet website. And the used gear is exactly as it sounds. The outlet is basically just like last year's model. So it's perfectly good gear. It's just outdated, and they're like trying to get rid of it. So it's marked down significantly. REI also has garage sales, which is just more used gear that you can buy in person. And let's see, browsing the sales at REI too. I think their big one is Memorial Day for their anniversary, but then Labor Day, they usually also have a big one too. And then also other, there's, I think, geartrade.com is another website where you can buy used gear at a discount. Sometimes it's like higher end gear, so it's still kind of pricey, but if you browse it at there, it just depends on what's available at that time. So always take a look. And then eBay too, and Reddit are also great for that. The items that I would invest the money in is a good backpack, one that you can actually try on and fit to you. Because if your backpack doesn't fit you and it's uncomfortable, it's just going to make the whole trip unpleasant. Footwear, you need really good footwear that you're comfortable in. And And then the other options, if you wanted to spend the money, was a sleeping bag. It doesn't have to be down. Mine's synthetic and I love it. But you just want to make sure that you're buying a bag that's going to be warm enough for wherever you're planning on going. And then your sleeping pad too, you want to make sure you're comfortable. But that being said, you don't necessarily need like the super lightweight inflatable ones. Starting out with just like a foam pad is still really comfortable and still provides good insulation. So that's some stuff to think about. And someone else mentioned that they were kind of scared to go backpacking alone, which is completely understandable. And we're interested in finding out some safety tips for doing so. If you don't have friends that want to go with you or you can't find a group, I would say, first of all, utilize this group. I would post in the Facebook group, see if there's anybody who is interested in going, is in the area where you live. You can come with us in September. I'm hoping if we can fill that trip, we can do another one if September doesn't work for you. Backpacking in a group is more fun. But that being said, there is something really nice about the solitude of going alone. So if you do choose to go alone, make sure especially if you're new to it, always go on very well marked, well traveled trails. Don't try to you don't want to be somewhere bushwhacking, trying to find your way. You want to go somewhere where the blazes are clear or there's cairns or whatever it is, something that's easy to find, a trail that's easy to find and stay on. And then plan your route ahead of time. That will help with knowing where you are when you're out there. Download that route to your phone, whether it's in I use Ride with GPS. You can also use, I think Garmin, you can download it to your watch. You can use AllTrails and download that to your phone because you're probably not going to have service when you're out there. So you just want to make sure you have access to it. Always give someone you trust tell them where you're going, send them the route that you're doing, and don't broadcast it elsewhere. Just tell that one person. Don't post on your social media oh, I'm going solo backpacking in this place, especially if your profile's public. You can post about all that afterwards when you're back at home safely. You don't want to broadcast that to the world because there are unfortunately crazy people out there who might capitalize on that. Be prepared, obviously. So we talked about the route that you're going, but you also want to make sure you're looking at the weather, packing the right layers. Are you fit enough to do whatever it is you plan to be doing? Things so make sure you train for it. Be aware of what plants and wildlife you might encounter. If there's going to be poison ivy, you might want to bring Technu with you. If there's going to be bears, you might want bear bells or bear spray, whatever you're most comfortable with. And then you always want to bring a first aid kit or an emergency kit. So make sure you know what's in those. You don't want to just bring it with you on the first day and then you need to use it and you're not sure what's in it. Maybe you wish you had packed something else. You don't want to be navigating that for the first time in a crisis. I would recommend not wearing headphones, especially when you're first starting out as you're getting more comfortable. And if there is known wildlife in the area, you just want to be able to be alert and aware of your surroundings. Start out small, build bigger. So maybe your first backpacking trip, you just hike an hour or two from your car, you set up camp, and then you hike back the next day. You will, as you do it more, it is scary when you first start, but as you do it more, you get more and more comfortable and you'll be willing to go further distances. And it won't be, when you're really nervous, it's just not as fun. So it's not always great to be out there for a long period of time. So I would just recommend starting small and building from there. You want to bring spare batteries for your phone, spare battery for your headlamp. If you have a rechargeable headlamp, you can use the same battery pack that you would use for your phone. Just make sure you have the right cord. If you are worried about being out of touch or getting lost and you can afford it, you can get a GPS satellite unit, like a Garmin InReach or something of that nature. That just allows you to be able to communicate with people, let them know where you are when you don't have reception. But it also is an SOS device. If something went wrong, medical responders can get to you. And then always acquire permits. So in Shenandoah, you need a backcountry permit. You leave something in your car wherever it's parked, and the rangers know there's somebody out there. You've told them with that permit where you're going, your planned route, so that if something does go wrong, they can find you easily. I know there was like just a case a couple weeks ago where someone went missing in Shenandoah National Park, and it took them multiple days to find them. And I don't think, maybe he hadn't planned on backpacking, so he didn't need a permit necessarily, but it took them a long time to find him. So that's just an easy step that you can take and make sure that you're in compliance with the park rules too. Know if bring an emergency shelter. So even if that's just like one of those like aluminum blankets that you throw over yourself in case it gets cold, but also know, especially if you're like hiking on the AT, if there's existing shelters on your route. So if you do encounter bad weather or something like that, you have somewhere that you can go. And then I just trust your gut. I've been in situations where I've dipped out because I've just felt unsafe and I've gone back to my car and I don't feel bad about it. Your instinct is probably reason you need to be polite. You just get out of a situation if you're uncomfortable with it. I think somebody posted on this group at one point about like feeling like they were being rude to someone who was giving them like the heebie-jeebies on the trail, and I think multiple people commented like, screw politeness, apologize later. And that's from a podcast that I listen to, and I love that because it's very true. You don't need to I think a lot of women especially feel the need to apologize all the time and be polite and be very respectful. And if somebody's making you uncomfortable, throw that out the window. You can just leave. And you can stand up for yourself. And then last but not least is bring your dog if you have one, especially if you're going alone. I feel so much safer hiking with my dog. He's generally loves all people, but occasionally he gets bad vibes from someone. And if that's the case, I steer clear of that person. I trust his gut like I trust my own. I feel better having him with me. And that kind of segues. I see there's some questions now in the chat.
Yeah, questions that I think may have gotten added onto our registrations after the last minute questions that.
Okay, awesome. So Valerie, one of them was how to pack food and water for a dog. We just pack it. We pack the food like we pack our own, and we pack extra. We took Blaze to Dolly Sods with us, and we just packed his food in a Ziploc bag, and made sure we had enough for each meal plus extra. I think we had like one extra meal in case for some reason we got stuck out there. And then we also had like lots of treats and like higher calorie food for him, since he was going to be hiking the same distance we were. And water, he just drank whatever filtered water we brought. So we had like 2 1-liter Catadines, and then I had a 2-liter reservoir. So I'd use the Catadine to fill the reservoir. And then we also had there were 4 of us. So we had the gravity hanging filter that we would set up at camp. Thankfully, we were always close to a water source at camp. So that just allowed us to have like an endless supply of water once we set up, and our dog Blaze would just drink whatever we drank. I also eats human food. Like he always gets something of what I'm eating. So as long as it's okay for dogs. Someone posted in the chat too that there's a used gear shop in Richmond for anyone in that area, which is awesome. And how do you handle a situation where you can't find a suitable tree to hang up a bear bag? Great question. Ideally, you'd have a bear canister with you. I know that's not always an option. I have hung bear bags before that were probably not in really bear-proof location. If you really can't find a good spot, just make sure ideally don't put it in your backpack and put your backpack far, because you don't want your backpack to get destroyed. Have some other sort of bag like a Ziploc or a dry bag or something smaller that you can put far away from your camp. Do that. If you can't do that, in the last case scenario, make sure all your food is in your backpack and you just put your backpack 100 yards away from you or something. You just want it to be far away from your camp so that the bear doesn't associate that food with you. Ideally, though, you do want to hang it or have a bear canister. And bear canisters are surprisingly easy to pack in your backpack because you can shove stuff in it and it really doesn't take up that much space. So if you're going to, I'm really short, so I sometimes have trouble hanging a good bear bag. So I would just bring a bear canister with me, knowing that that could be an issue that I have. And then I'll put that bear canister far away from my campsite. And then any tips on using a food dehydrator at home? We have one and we never use it. We've used it a couple of times when we have like a plethora of zucchini from our garden that we want to make like zucchini chips out of. I just think it's a lot of work and I don't really like eating dehydrated food that much. And so if I am going to, I just buy one from the store. But there's a lot of good online resources for that. Dave, my husband, also knows more about that than I do. I know you can do it with like pretty much anything. And there are some good websites that when I was considering making my own dehydrated meals that have recipes and they give you like really explicit directions, like the exact weight of things that you need to dehydrate. And when you actually package up the whole meal, it all goes in together. So I would say utilize Google, and I'm sorry, I can't be more helpful. I think that's everything. Anybody else have any questions that's on here?
You mentioned that you usually pack a bear canister. I have the hardest time getting mine to fit in my pack. Do you like stuff your sleeping bag in it?
Yeah. And even if it's like clothes, or like my pillow, my headlamp, like all the little things that take up space. I don't think my sleeping bag doesn't fit in mine. But whatever I can, if you had like a quilt or something that packs up smaller, that would probably fit. Whatever takes up space in your bag, like food too can go in there. It's not ideal if you need to like access it quickly, but like maybe the food that you're cooking at night, or really depending on how long your trip is and how much food you pack, it might be easiest to just pack all of your food in it, because then it's easy to take in and out and put away once you get to camp. It's not ideal, but and it also depends on how big your pack is. Like for one night, it might be difficult if you just have like a 35-liter pack or something, but for the bigger ones, I can usually swing it. And I always bring rope with me in the hopes that I'll be able to hang a bear bag, but it's not always an option. So
I'm just terrible at throwing, so I literally just can't rely on that.
It's hard. It's definitely a learned skill.
Yes. Let's see. It looks like we've got at least one more question in the chat before we go.
Can you share the link for the beginner backpacking trip?
And then what size bear can do you use for 1 or a 2 night trip? And let me share that link real quick.
That's a good question. I don't know what the size of ours is. It's probably whatever the smallest one is. I want to say we have one that's like, and this is not helpful, but like maybe like a foot tall, that we brought with us for like a 2-night trip. But that was also for multiple people. So they come in various sizes. For one night, I would honestly just buy like the smallest one that you have, or that you can find. If you think you're going to be doing longer trips, I would just invest in the bigger size, assuming you're going to be using a similar size pack and you think it'll fit. But if you're just planning on doing like one nights, you're not going to have that much food with you. So you can probably shove it all into one little canister.
Let's see. My phone is goofing up. There we go. Okay. I'm about to send that link.
Awesome.
There we go.
And just so you guys know, for the beginner backpacking trip, we will have, for all the people who have signed up, we'll have like a meeting like this, a webinar where everybody can kind of come together. We'll do some introductions, get to know each other a little bit. And that'll be an opportunity for you guys to ask questions. We can talk about like food again. We can talk about the gear that you're going to have, things like that. And then you'll also obviously have our contact information if you have any questions before that or after. So I don't want you to feel like you're going into this blind. There will be a lot more information. Any other comforting words to share with my husband, who's terrified of the thought of me backpacking on my own? I know that feeling. Um, I would just, be very transparent with him. You don't want to deny that there's risks, because then he'll think that you're being naive. I would make sure that you share your route with him. If he's really worried about like communication, get one of the satellite devices if you guys think it's worth it. What else? I mean, when you do your route planning and everything, it's usually pretty easy to scout out roughly where you're going to camp too. So having an idea of a pinned location in your route that you can give him where you're planning to set up camp. And if you have that GPS device, sending them a message and just saying like, hey, I made it to camp. And in the morning say, hey, I'm leaving. Depending on where you are, you not necessarily an issue. Sometimes in Shenandoah, I have good enough reception to send like a text or something like that. I don't know. That's really all I got. Just tell them that you're a perfectly capable human being and that you're well prepared. Dave definitely has the same reservation, so I completely understand the feeling. But I think once you do it once or twice and you show that it was successful and you didn't encounter anything too alarming and that you were well prepared, then it becomes easier for them too, just like it'll become easier for you. Do you have tips on space-saving toiletries, personal hygiene stuff to bring on trips, especially for backpacking in grizzly bear country? Good question. I usually, so for backpacking, I'm kind of a scumbag. I don't like bring shampoo and things like that. I'll usually bring Dr. Bronner's, which I'll use for cleaning off my body if I need to, and then also for cleaning dishes. So it's kind of like dual purpose. It's an all purpose. So basically, you can also, if you don't want to bring like liquid, you could just bring a couple of like rolled up shower wipes. They're a lot of times they'll advertise them as technically being biodegradable, but I would recommend packing them out because those things take forever to actually biodegrade. But that takes up only a little bit of space. Especially if you're going to be in bear country, you don't want anything scented. So like if you're bringing deodorant, try to find unscented deodorant. And I only bring like, the only towel I really bring is like a little microfiber one that packs up really small. I bring one of the toothbrushes that like folds up and like goes inside itself. So it has a little cover and it's only maybe like this big. And then I just bring like a travel size thing of toothpaste. I'm pretty minimalist when it comes to like toiletries and things in the backcountry. Obviously you want to bring like toilet paper and things like that. And then just, even if something is unscented and you have room in your bear bag or in your bear canister, I would just put it in there, especially in grizzly bear country. You don't want to mess around with that kind of stuff. Yeah, that's probably it. I would just say like only bring the bare necessities, and if you can, like find things with multiple purposes. Like if you bring a towel that you want to use for like wiping off your dishes and also like wiping yourself off, that's, who cares? That's fine. Good question though. Anything else? These are all really good questions, guys. Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, we really appreciate your time, Meredith. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And this was awesome. I know I was like taking notes on all your recipes and stuff. I'll be excited to try some of that out.
Oh, good. I'm glad. And I mean, you guys can message me on Facebook or whatever. There's more of where that came from. I don't have like recipes written down, but I have like general ideas of things. If none of that appeals to you and you're interested in trying something else, just shoot me a message. I'm just Meredith Miller on Facebook. I'm in the group. So
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, y'all. Have a good night.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.